students and I say, what do you really want? I'd like to get more things for my kids. And what do they really need? They need your time, your presence, your well-being, okay? So as you think about money issues, just recognize the culture has gone far left in terms of that. In 1960, a guy by the name of Leo Buscaglia, many of you remember Leo? Great, great soul. But he did some research, and the question was, if you could have anything, what would you want? And the single word was, I would want to be happy. That was the message. You asked the same question about 4 years ago. Happiness wasn't on the list. Money was. Isn't that a sad shift? But the shift causes more stress, and that's the point. None of you have these. I mean, we know that half of us have been divorced at one time or another. We know that there are lots of issues in common. More people today are spending time getting in, getting out, and maintaining relationships than ever before. By the way, you'll love this. My grandfather was in an arranged marriage. Okay? I'm not sure how that worked, but it did. And loss of control. The most significant factor that we encounter today is a loss of control. And what does that represent? It represents a high level of helplessness, because we have a belief that we can't do anything. And when you look at the issues around learned helplessness and the research, it's really powerful. So the point being is if these are sources of stress, what can you do about it? And I keep coming back to that, and I will try to answer those questions as we go through it. So I know none of you have done the bull riding. How many of you have done bull riding? A live bull or a mechanical one? Live. Live? Okay. Sober or? Okay. I just thought I'd ask. My wife, in the early parts of our marriage, decided to try a mechanical bull. And she thought if she had one beer, she would improve. And then 2 beers, well, obviously her performance did not improve. But that was the last time she rode a bull also. So, none of you have this, do you? Okay. Heaven forbid you should be the dog. Okay. So as you think about this, how many of you have had any of these? You know, headaches, heartaches, backaches, sadness, tension. How many of you? We've all had it. You can't get away from it. It's just part of life. And sometimes when I'm in my oh, poor me's position, my wife would say things like, get over it. And in a way, there's a lot of truth to that. So I'm not devaluing it. I'm just saying these are parts, these are real. But here's what they lead to, is that when you're looking at our lives and you're looking at this notion of how well we're doing, many times we'll think we're doing okay. And then God talks to us. Some of you listen and some of you don't. And you end up with some of these things. Symptoms related to sleep. None of you have that, right? Okay. Stomach problems. Anxiety. It is amazing to me when I talk to my students, how many students who are 17, 18, 19, 20 years old, who are already on anxiety medications. And you know what's really interesting? Is the research doesn't support they're that successful. They get you through the bumps, but they're not that successful. There are a lot of other things to consider. Depression, same thing. Immune system issues. Now some of you say, well, I don't have any of those diseases. How many of you have allergies? Oh yeah, allergies are a big issue. And then muscle tension. It's really interesting. When I teach relaxation techniques, I'll have students come back and say, you know, my headache went away. I wonder where that came from. Muscle tension is a big issue. And many of you will hold things in your body in different ways. And when you hold it in different ways, it shows up. It talks to you. Okay? I used to have one on here called sexual dysfunction. Don't raise your hand on this one. But the reality is that there are lots of symptoms. If you go online and just type up symptoms, if you're not paranoid, you will be. The reality is that symptoms are a part of it, and in my way, it's just simply showing that your body's out of balance. That's all it is. And so then the question is, how well do you listen? And a lot of us don't, and then we end up with more significant issues. We end up with not just a headache, but migraines. We end up not just an upset stomach, but ulcers. We end up with TMJ, and our jaws are in chronic pain. There's lots of directions that this can go. Now, I didn't want to depress you, so this is the last time I'm going to talk about symptoms. But as you think about the whole issue, the reality is that it's just a message. And if you listen, fine. If you don't, you might listen more later. A good friend of mine, because I'm not a good listener, a good friend of mine gave me a book called A Whack in the Side of the Head. You can figure out what that was about. Some of you do have sleep problems, and I think it's worth looking at in terms of some things you can do. First of all, these are just basic, but if you're not doing them, I really challenge you to think about it. One, create rituals when you go to bed. Oh, and as you think about rituals, somebody say, yeah, I have 2 beers, I'm fine. But the reality is the research doesn't support that the alcohol makes a good contribution to sleep. You may end up asleep because you've passed out, but that's not the kind of sleep we're talking about. 2, slow down 1 to 2 hours before bed. Now, it says avoid heavy, vigorous physical activity. I'm not talking about making love, just so we're clear on that. But be active and be active early in the day. All the research says those of you that exercise regularly will have better sleep patterns. There is nobody that says, unless you try to exercise just before bed, and then usually you're wired. So avoid that time period. Again, it may be different for you, but for most people. Heavy meals, snacking, avoid alcohol, caffeine, obviously. Sleep in one place. Don't sleep on the couch watching TV and then go up to bed. If you're that tired, go to bed. Okay? And then no TV or computer in the bedroom. And no food in the bedroom either. I know some of you just got depressed again. Okay. So when you think of these are actions you can take. These are things you control. Doesn't matter what's going on outside. These are actions you can take. In terms of things to avoid irritants, the caffeine is one. How many of you have done deep breathing activities? Any of you? Okay. If you don't do deep breathing, and it's simply the easiest one is diaphragmatic, where you fill the stomach and then slowly release. If you can take it in through your nose and out through your mouth, it's wonderful. But if you just do that when you get in bed and you're laying there quiet, it'll quiet you down more because it contradicts or combats the stress response. So it's an easy thing to do, and it's something that works. Limit your time in bed if you're restless. Don't lay there. How many of you have done this? You're laying in bed and you say, oh my God, if I don't get to sleep, I'm going to have a terrible day tomorrow. You doing that? And then you, once you've done that, you guarantee the next day you get up and say, God, I had a terrible night's sleep. I'm going to have a bad day. And what kind of day do you have? Bad day. Sure. Whose fault was that? Okay. Limit light and sound. Even those silly clocks with the red dials on them that blink, turn them away so you don't look at them. And you still can't sleep, get up. Go do something positive. Make it sedate, though. Things that also work. I talked about the relaxation techniques. If you're still having trouble and you wake up in the middle of the night, do the relaxations again. Second, if you've got a thought on your mind, write it down. What does that do? It frees your head up to say, I can go to bed now because it'll be here in the morning, as opposed to carrying it all night. Set limits. Again, if you wake up in the middle of the night, it's not working, get up. And then finally, when you do get up, be positive. Do something that's good for you. For some of you, it might be the only time you're alone. Enjoy it. So, none of you do this, do you? How many of you have shot yourself in the foot? We don't even need to know the gauge. Okay? But stupid is as stupid does. Now, the next series of pieces of information are really things that we do to ourselves. Now, the slide may look a little different than that. You say, oh, this looks like it's going to take us somewhere. Not really. These are talked about challenges we create in our own lives. And as you think about the challenges, number one challenge, none of